The morning sunlight streamed through the massive windows of the Whitmore estate, illuminating the sleek, marble floors and modern decor. In the spacious kitchen, Lena moved swiftly, arranging plates and silverware on a large dining table. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and warm croissants filled the air as she worked with precision, ensuring everything was perfect. Lena glanced at the clock. 7 sharp. Alex Whitmore, her employer, would be coming down any moment now. She had worked in this house for 6 months and had learned one thing above all else: punctuality and perfection were non-negotiable. Just as she placed the last coffee cup on the table, she heard the sharp sound of footsteps echoing through the hallway. Alex entered the room, his presence commanding and his expression, as always, cold and distant. Dressed in a crisp suit, his dark hair perfectly styled, he radiated power and authority, but also an unshakable air of discontent. Lena stepped back, folding her hands in front of her as Alex approached the table. He glanced over the setup, his sharp eyes scanning every detail. "Is this a joke?" Alex's voice cut through the silence like a knife. Lena frowned slightly, confused. "Is something wrong, Mr. Whitmore?" Alex picked up a spoon, holding it up as though it were evidence in a courtroom. "The placement is off. Do I pay you to make amateur mistakes like this?" Lena blinked, her confusion giving way to irritation. "I don't understand. The table is set exactly as it should be." Alex's gaze narrowed, his tone icy. "I don't need explanations. I need results. I pay you to do things right, not to make stupid mistakes." Lena felt her cheeks flush with a mix of embarrassment and anger. She had worked tirelessly to make everything perfect, and yet here he was, nitpicking over something so trivial. "I'm not a machine, Mr. Whitmore," Lena said, her voice steady but firm. "I'm human, and humans make mistakes sometimes." Alex stared at her, clearly taken aback by her response. Most of the staff in his home avoided eye contact, let alone spoke back to him. But Lena's gaze didn't waver, her brown eyes steady and unyielding. For a brief moment, Alex seemed at a loss for words, but he quickly recovered, his expression hardening. "That's not an excuse," he said curtly. "If you want to keep this job, I suggest you remember that." Lena's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. Instead, she gave a small nod and stepped away, her posture composed even though her heart raced. As Alex sat down to eat, he couldn't shake the look in Lena's eyes, calm yet defiant, as if she refused to be intimidated. It was unsettling, and yet, strangely, it lingered in his mind. He wasn't used to people standing up to him, especially not someone like her. Lena retreated to the kitchen, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the edge of the counter. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. She couldn't afford to lose this job, no matter how insufferable Alex Whitmore could be. Her younger brother, Tom, depended on her income to pay for his education. As she resumed her work, her mind replayed the encounter. She had heard stories about Alex's ruthlessness, not just in business but in his personal life as well. He was known for his short temper and lack of empathy, a man who had everything yet seemed perpetually dissatisfied. But for all his wealth and power, Lena couldn't help but feel there was something else beneath his harsh exterior, something broken and guarded. In the dining room, Alex sipped his coffee, his thoughts unusually preoccupied. He glanced toward the kitchen, where he could hear the faint clatter of dishes. For reasons he couldn't explain, Lena's words replayed in his mind. "I'm not a machine. I'm human." Her tone had been steady, her gaze unwavering. Most people either groveled or avoided him altogether, but Lena had stood her ground. It was rare, almost refreshing, and it annoyed him. Shaking his head, Alex dismissed the thought and focused on his schedule for the day. There was no room for distractions, and certainly not from a maid. But as the morning unfolded, he found himself thinking about her more than he cared to admit. The luxurious Whitmore mansion stood as a fortress of wealth and power, but within its walls, Alex lived in self-imposed isolation. The grand halls, adorned with priceless art and lavish decor, felt cold and empty, a reflection of the man who owned them. Alex Whitmore hadn't always been this way. Years ago, he had been ambitious and hopeful, eager to share his success with those closest to him. But betrayal had a way of hardening even the softest hearts. His closest friend and business partner had stolen from him, nearly destroying the company Alex had built from the ground up. The pain didn't stop there. Not long after, his fiancée, Julia, had ended their engagement, choosing to marry someone wealthier. "I need stability, Alex," she had said, her voice cold. "You're too risky." Those two betrayals had left Alex broken, his trust in people shattered. He built a wall around himself, turning his pain into drive, his vulnerability into disdain. Success became his only companion, and he ruled his empire with an iron fist. But despite his achievements, Alex couldn't escape the emptiness that lingered, a void he couldn't fill no matter how much wealth he amassed. In contrast, Lena's life was defined by struggle and resilience. She had lost her parents at a young age, leaving her to care for her younger brother, Tom. The siblings had moved from one foster home to another until Lena turned 18 and took custody of Tom. Now, in her early 20s, Lena juggled multiple responsibilities. She worked as a maid at the Whitmore estate, attended night classes at a local college, and ensured Tom had everything he needed to succeed. Her days were long and exhausting, but she never complained. To Lena, her brother was her world. She wanted him to have the opportunities she never had, and every sacrifice she made was for his future. One afternoon, Alex walked past the staff quarters, his phone in hand, engrossed in an email. A voice from one of the nearby rooms caught his attention. "Lena, you're always working so hard," a cheerful voice said. It was one of the younger maids. "I don't mind," Lena replied. "As long as Tom is doing well, it's worth it." Alex paused, curiosity pulling him closer. He leaned against the doorframe, careful to stay out of sight. "You're amazing," the other maid said. "Not everyone would take on so much." "I'm just doing what anyone would," Lena said with a small laugh. "Tom deserves a good life. He's so smart, you know. He's going to be a doctor someday. I just need to keep going until he gets there." Her voice was steady, but Alex caught the faint tremor of exhaustion beneath it. That evening, as Alex sat in his study, he couldn't shake what he had overheard. Lena's determination and selflessness were a stark contrast to the greed and betrayal he had experienced. She didn't have much, yet she gave everything she had for someone she loved. He thought about her response that morning, "I'm not a machine. I'm human." It had annoyed him at the time, but now, it felt different. There was strength in her words, a quiet defiance that lingered in his mind. Alex leaned back in his chair, staring at the flickering flames in the fireplace. He had dismissed Lena as just another employee, but for the first time he found himself wondering if there was more to her than he had assumed. The sun was just beginning to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the Whitmore estate. Inside the mansion, the quiet hum of daily life continued. Lena was in the living room, dusting the shelves near the large bay window, while Alex paced nearby, reviewing some documents on his phone. Distracted by an urgent email, Alex didn't notice the loose edge of the thick rug beneath his feet. As he turned sharply, his foot caught, and he stumbled forward. The heavy crystal vase on the edge of the table tipped, poised to crash to the floor, and possibly onto Alex. Lena reacted instantly. Dropping the dust cloth, she darted forward and caught the vase just before it shattered, steadying it in her hands. "Careful," she exclaimed, her voice filled with genuine concern. Alex straightened himself, his face a mix of surprise and discomfort. "I had it under control," he muttered, brushing invisible dust off his suit. "Really?" Lena quipped, setting the vase back on the table, "because it looked like gravity was winning." Alex turned to face her, his brow furrowing at her boldness. But instead of snapping at her, as he normally would, he found himself uncharacteristically silent. Lena smiled faintly, picking up her dust cloth again. "You're welcome, by the way." Alex's lips pressed into a thin line, and he gave a curt nod. "Thank you," he said stiffly before turning and walking out of the room. Later that evening, as Lena finished her duties in the kitchen, she noticed a small paper bag on the counter with her name written on it in neat, unfamiliar handwriting. Curious, she opened it to find a few over-the-counter pain relievers, a box of herbal tea, and a small container of premium chocolates. Her brow furrowed in confusion. She glanced around, but the kitchen was empty. "Who could have?" she murmured to herself. Upstairs in his study, Alex sat at his desk, pretending to focus on his work while he scrolled aimlessly on his phone. He wasn't one to express gratitude openly, but the small gesture had felt appropriate. Yet now, he found himself second-guessing it. A few days later, as the evening settled over the mansion, Alex wandered into the library to retrieve a book. The room was dimly lit, the warm light of a single lamp illuminating one corner. To his surprise, Lena was sitting there, her brow furrowed in concentration as she flipped through a thick book on business strategy. She didn't notice him at first, her lips moving slightly as she read a line silently to herself. "What are you reading?" Alex's voice broke the quiet, startling her. She looked up, her eyes wide. "Oh, Mr. Whitmore, I didn't hear you come in." "You didn't answer my question," he said, crossing his arms as he leaned against the doorframe. Lena glanced down at the book, suddenly self-conscious. "It's just something about business management," she said. Alex raised an eyebrow, stepping closer. "Why are you reading that?" Lena hesitated before answering. "I'm taking some night classes. Business administration. I want to start something of my own someday." He stared at her for a moment, clearly taken aback. "You're a maid here, but you're studying business." Lena straightened in her chair, her chin lifting slightly. "Just because I clean your house doesn't mean I can't dream bigger." Her tone was calm but firm, and Alex found himself both surprised and impressed by her resolve. He hadn't expected this from her, the quiet maid who dusted his shelves and set his table with precision. "What kind of business?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. Lena hesitated, then offered a small smile. "I'd like to open a small cafe someday. Something warm and welcoming, where people can feel at home." Alex nodded slowly, his gaze softening. "And you think studying business will help you get there?" "I know it will," she said confidently. For the first time, Alex saw a spark in Lena that he hadn't noticed before: ambition, determination, and an unwavering belief in herself. It was a quality he admired, even if he wasn't ready to admit it out loud. "You're surprising," he said finally, his voice quieter than usual. Lena smiled, tilting her head slightly. "Is that a compliment?" Alex smirked faintly, shaking his head as he turned to leave. "Don't let it go to your head." As he walked away, he couldn't help but think about their conversation. For so long he had dismissed Lena as just another employee, but now he found himself seeing her in a new light. That night, as he sat in his study, Alex realized that Lena was far more than she appeared, and for reasons he couldn't quite explain, he felt compelled to know more. The days that followed marked a subtle but significant change in the dynamic between Alex and Lena. Though Alex remained reserved, his tone softened during their interactions. He no longer barked orders or criticized her over minor details. Instead, he found himself asking her questions, small ones at first, like whether she had any suggestions for the week's meals or how her classes were going. Lena noticed the shift, but she kept her guard up. She couldn't afford to misinterpret kindness as anything more than fleeting gestures, especially from someone like Alex, who had always been distant and demanding. One afternoon, as Lena was wiping down the counters in the kitchen, her phone buzzed on the nearby table. She glanced at the screen and saw Tom's name. Smiling, she quickly answered. "Hey, Tom," she said cheerfully, balancing the phone between her ear and shoulder as she worked. Her brother's voice on the other end was weak, and as he spoke, Lena's expression shifted from lighthearted to deeply concerned. "What do you mean you've been feeling sick?" "For how long?" she asked, her tone rising with worry. Alex, passing by the kitchen on his way to the study, paused when he heard her voice. He lingered just out of sight, his curiosity piqued. "You need to see a doctor," Lena said firmly, her voice trembling slightly. "No, I don't care how much it costs. Your health is more important." She hung up a few moments later, leaning against the counter with a sigh. Her eyes glistened as she wiped at them quickly, taking a deep breath to steady herself. That evening, as Alex worked in his study, her words echoed in his mind. The strength and determination in her voice had struck him, as had the quiet vulnerability she tried to hide. Without thinking too much about it, Alex picked up his phone and dialed a contact at a private clinic. "There's someone I need you to see," he said, his tone curt but firm. "His name is Tom Carter. I'll cover the expenses. Just make sure he gets whatever care he needs." He ended the call and leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. It wasn't like him to intervene in other people's lives, but something about Lena's unwavering devotion to her brother had compelled him. 2 days later, Lena received a surprising call from Tom. "You won't believe this," Tom said, his voice stronger than it had been during their last conversation. "I went to the clinic yesterday, and they ran some tests. Everything's fine now. They gave me the medicine I needed." Lena's brow furrowed in confusion. "But how? I haven't even sent you the money yet." "The bill was already paid," Tom said. "The clinic wouldn't tell me who did it, though." Lena hung up, her mind racing. She couldn't think of anyone who would have done such a thing. Except maybe, no. She dismissed the thought as quickly as it came. Why would Alex go out of his way to help her? Over the next few days, Lena couldn't help but notice Alex's subtle attempts to make her feel more comfortable. He no longer avoided eye contact during their conversations, and occasionally asked about her brother's health. Though she didn't say anything, a small part of her began to wonder if Alex had been the one to help Tom. The timing was too perfect to be a coincidence, but she couldn't bring herself to ask him directly. One evening, as Lena cleared the dining table, Alex entered the room and sat down with a cup of coffee. "You've been quiet lately," he said casually, breaking the silence. Lena glanced at him, surprised. "I didn't think you'd notice." Alex smirked faintly. "I notice more than you think." Lena hesitated, then sighed. "It's just a lot to think about, but everything's fine now." Alex nodded, sipping his coffee. "Good. I'm glad to hear that." For a moment, their eyes met, and Lena felt a flicker of something she couldn't quite place. Gratitude, maybe, or the faintest hint of warmth. But she quickly reminded herself not to read too much into it. Alex was her employer, and whatever kindness he had shown was likely fleeting. She couldn't let herself hope for more. As Alex watched Lena leave the room, he found himself feeling conflicted. For so long he had kept people at arm's length, but something about Lena's resilience and quiet strength had begun to chip away at his defenses. He wasn't sure where these feelings were leading, but one thing was certain: Lena was no longer just a maid in his eyes. The atmosphere in the Whitmore mansion was unusually lively that evening. Alex's old friend Nathan had dropped by for a visit, bringing with him the kind of charm and arrogance that often left a sour taste in Alex's mouth. Nathan, a fellow millionaire, had always been brash, his words sharp and often inconsiderate. Lena had just served coffee and biscuits in the sitting room, her demeanor polite and composed as always. She was about to leave the room when Nathan's voice stopped her. "Hold on," he said, his tone laced with mockery. "So, this is the famous maid I've been hearing about." Lena paused, her back stiffening, but she turned around, maintaining her professionalism. "I'm just doing my job, sir," she said evenly. Nathan chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Oh, I'm sure you are, but let's not pretend here. Women like you always have a game to play." Alex's brow furrowed, his irritation growing. "Nathan, that's enough." But Nathan ignored him, his gaze fixed on Lena. "What's your angle, huh? Hoping to land a rich husband? Or maybe you're just here for the scraps he throws your way?" Lena's hands clenched at her sides, but she didn't respond. She simply bowed her head slightly, turned, and walked out of the room with quiet dignity. The moment Lena left, Alex stood, his glare directed at Nathan. "That was completely uncalled for," Alex said, his voice low but simmering with anger. Nathan smirked, unfazed. "Oh, come on, Alex, don't tell me you've fallen for the help. She's clearly playing you. Women like her always do." "Women like her?" Alex repeated, his tone sharper. "You don't know anything about her." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "I don't need to. It's obvious. Look, I'm just saying be careful. She's not worth it." Alex didn't respond. Instead, he walked out of the room, his mind racing. Later that night, Lena sat in her small room, her hands trembling as she wrote a letter on a piece of plain white paper. Nathan's words echoed in her mind, each one cutting deeper than she cared to admit. She had faced judgment and insults before, but hearing it in Alex's home, where she had started to feel a small sense of belonging, was too much. She folded the letter carefully and placed it on the desk in the corner. With a heavy heart, she began packing her few belongings into a small suitcase. The next morning, Alex went to the kitchen, expecting to see Lena as usual. But she wasn't there. Instead, he found the letter on the counter, addressed to him. He unfolded it, his chest tightening as he read her words. "Dear Mr. Whitmore, I appreciate the opportunities I've had while working here, but it's time for me to leave. I've realized that my presence in your home has caused more harm than good, and I don't want to be a burden or the subject of anyone's scorn. Thank you for everything, and I wish you all the best. Lena." "Oh." Alex stared at the letter, his hands tightening around the edges. She was gone. The realization hit him like a blow. He felt a hollowness settle in his chest, an ache he couldn't ignore. Nathan's words replayed in his mind, but this time they fueled his anger, not at Lena, but at himself for allowing such disrespect in his home. He thought of her quiet strength, her determination, her selflessness. She wasn't a burden. She wasn't a schemer. She was everything he hadn't known he needed. For the first time, Alex admitted the truth to himself. He had fallen in love with Lena. Refusing to let her go without a fight, Alex instructed his staff to find out where she had gone. After a few hours, he received the information he needed. Lena had checked into a small motel on the outskirts of the city, likely intending to find another job. Without hesitation, Alex grabbed his coat and keys and headed out the door. When Alex arrived at the motel, he found Lena sitting on a bench outside, a small suitcase at her feet. She was staring at the sky, her expression distant and tired. "Lena," Alex said, his voice breaking the silence. She turned, her eyes widening slightly in surprise. "Mr. Whitmore, what are you doing here?" "I came to bring you back," he said firmly, stepping closer. Lena shook her head, standing. "I can't go back. It's better this way." "For who?" Alex asked, his tone urgent. "Not for me." Lena looked away, her voice quiet. "I don't belong in your world. People like Nathan will never let me forget that." "I don't care about Nathan," Alex said, his voice softening. "And you shouldn't either. You belong where you want to be, Lena. And I want you to be with me." Her gaze snapped to his, searching his eyes for sincerity. "Why? Why does it matter so much to you?" "Because I love you," Alex admitted, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "And I was too much of a coward to say it before. But I'm saying it now. You've changed me, Lena. You've shown me what it means to care about someone again." Tears welled in Lena's eyes, but she hesitated. "How do I know this isn't just pity?" Alex stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Because I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I don't want to lose you, Lena. Please come back with me." For a long moment, Lena stared at him, her heart pounding. Finally, she nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Okay." Alex exhaled, relief washing over him as he pulled her into a gentle embrace. For the first time in years, he felt whole. The hum of quiet conversation and the scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air of the small cafe where Lena had found work. It was modest, with mismatched furniture and a cozy charm that suited her perfectly. She was behind the counter, arranging pastries on a tray, her mind preoccupied with thoughts of her new beginning. The bell above the door jingled, signaling a new customer. Lena didn't look up immediately, assuming it was just another patron. But when a familiar voice spoke her name, she froze. "Lena." She turned slowly, her heart racing as she met Alex's gaze. He stood in the doorway, his tall frame silhouetted against the sunlight streaming through the windows. His usually composed demeanor seemed slightly unraveled, his eyes holding a mixture of urgency and vulnerability. "Mr. Whitmore," Lena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Alex," he corrected, stepping closer. "Please, just call me Alex." She swallowed hard, her hands clutching the edge of the counter. "What are you doing here?" "I came to find you," he said simply. Lena gestured for one of her coworkers to take over and led Alex to a small table in the corner. They sat across from each other, the air between them heavy with unspoken words. "You shouldn't have come," Lena said after a moment, her tone cautious. Alex leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table. "I had to. I couldn't just let you leave like that." "You didn't let me leave," Lena said, her voice firm but not unkind. "I chose to leave. And I made the mistake of letting you think I was okay with that," Alex countered. "But I'm not, Lena. I'm not okay with you being gone." Her eyes searched his, looking for some sign of insincerity, but all she found was honesty. "Why does it matter so much to you?" Alex hesitated, his jaw tightening as he tried to find the right words. "Because you've become a part of my life in a way I never expected. You're not just someone who works for me, Lena. You're so much more than that." Lena shook her head, her voice trembling. "You don't understand. People like Nathan, people in your world, they'll never see me as anything but a maid, someone beneath them." "I don't care what Nathan or anyone else thinks," Alex said, his voice firm. "What I care about is how I feel about you. And I need you to know that I see you, Lena, for who you are, for your strength, your kindness, your intelligence. You've made me realize what I've been missing, and I can't ignore that anymore." Lena looked down at her hands, her emotions swirling. She had spent so long building walls around herself, protecting her heart from disappointment. Could she really trust that Alex's feelings were genuine? "I don't know," she said quietly. "I don't want to be someone you feel sorry for." Alex reached across the table, gently taking her hands in his. "This isn't pity, Lena. This is me realizing that I've fallen for you, and I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I was too wrapped up in my own pain to recognize what was right in front of me." Her breath hitched, tears welling in her eyes. "Alex, I don't know if I can fit into your life. It's so different from mine." "Then we'll make a new one," he said softly. "Together, on our terms." The sincerity in his voice broke through Lena's doubts. She looked up at him, her eyes glistening. "You really mean that?" "Every word," Alex said. "Just give me a chance to prove it to you." Lena hesitated for a moment longer, then nodded slowly. Okay, but this has to be real, Alex. No games, no pretending. It's as real as it gets, he promised, a small smile breaking through his usual seriousness. As they sat there, hands still entwined, the noise of the cafe faded into the background. For the first time in a long time, Lena felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something beautiful. And for Alex, the weight he had carried for so long finally began to lift. The grand Whitmore estate was bustling with activity as preparations for the evening's event reached their peak. Alex, standing near the window of his study, adjusted the cuff of his tailored suit and glanced outside. The lawn was illuminated with soft lights, and staff moved efficiently to set up the grand party. Tonight wasn't just another business gathering, it was a declaration. Alex had invited his most trusted colleagues, business partners, and influential figures from his industry, not for a deal, but to share something deeply personal. Lena, standing across the room in a simple but elegant dress Alex had gifted her, looked at him nervously. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice steady but unsure. Alex turned to her, his expression softening. "I've never been more certain of anything. You don't have to worry, Lena. Just be yourself." When the guests arrived, the mansion was alive with the hum of conversations and the clinking of glasses. Alex made his rounds, greeting guests, while Lena lingered in the background. Though she was nervous, she carried herself with quiet grace, nodding politely to those who acknowledged her. The evening reached its pivotal moment when Alex stepped onto the small stage set up in the ballroom. A hush fell over the crowd as he took the microphone. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, his voice calm and assured. "Many of you know me as a businessman, someone who's built his success through hard work and persistence. But tonight I want to talk about something much more important, about someone who has changed my life in ways I never imagined." His gaze swept over the crowd before landing on Lena, who stood at the edge of the room. "Lena Carter," he continued, his voice filled with sincerity, "is the person who taught me what it means to care again. She reminded me that strength comes in many forms and that sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones we overlook." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as Alex extended a hand toward Lena, beckoning her to join him. For a moment, Lena hesitated, her heart pounding. Then, with a deep breath, she stepped forward, her head held high as she climbed onto the stage. Alex took her hand, his smile unwavering. "This is the woman who inspires me every day," he said, his voice steady. "And tonight, I want all of you to know that she's not just my partner in life but my equal in every way." As the applause erupted, a prominent business partner, Mr. Harlow, raised a glass with a sly smirk. "A bold statement, Alex," he said. "But partnerships are about more than inspiration. I'd like to know if she has the acumen to match her charm." The room grew tense as all eyes turned to Lena. Alex started to respond, but Lena gently placed her hand on his arm, stopping him. "I appreciate the challenge, Mr. Harlow," Lena said, her voice calm but confident. "And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have." Harlow leaned back, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "Very well. If you were advising Alex on his upcoming expansion into the European market, what strategy would you use to ensure long-term success?" Lena paused for a moment, collecting her thoughts. Then she spoke with clarity and precision. "I'd suggest focusing on sustainability and cultural adaptation. European markets value long-term relationships and ethical practices. By prioritizing transparency and aligning with local values, Alex's company can build trust and a loyal customer base." Her answer was met with silence, followed by a slow clap from Harlow himself. "Impressive," he admitted. "It seems Alex has chosen well." The room erupted into applause once more, and Alex couldn't hide the pride in his eyes as he looked at Lena. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and warm conversations. Guests approached Lena, eager to speak with her and offer their support. For the first time, she felt truly accepted, not just as Alex's partner, but as someone with a voice and value of her own. Later, as the party wound down and the last guest departed, Alex and Lena found themselves alone on the balcony, the cool night air brushing against their skin. "You were incredible tonight," Alex said, his voice filled with admiration. Lena smiled, leaning against the railing. "I was terrified. But I realized something. I've spent so long doubting myself, thinking I didn't belong in your world. But tonight, I finally believed I do." Alex stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "You've always belonged, Lena. I was just too blind to see it at first. But I promise, I'll spend the rest of my life making up for that." Lena looked up at him, her eyes shimmering. "You already have, Alex." In the weeks and months that followed, Alex and Lena began building a life together, one rooted in mutual respect, love, and partnership. Lena continued to pursue her education, with Alex's unwavering support, while also taking on a more active role in his company. Their relationship wasn't without challenges, but they faced them together, knowing that they were stronger as a team. One evening, as they sat together in the garden, Alex turned to Lena, his expression thoughtful. "You've changed everything for me," he said quietly. Lena smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "And you've shown me that sometimes life has a way of surprising us." As the stars twinkled above them, Alex and Lena knew that their journey was just beginning, a journey filled with love, hope, and the promise of a brighter future together. Alex and Lena's journey shows us that love can bloom in the most unexpected places. From a cold, distant millionaire and a hard-working maid to a powerful partnership built on trust and respect, their story is a testament to the transformative power of connection and understanding. If this heartfelt story inspired you, don't forget to like and share it with someone who believes in second chances and the magic of love. For more incredible tales that touch your heart and stir your soul, make sure to subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time with another story that will warm your heart and inspire your spirit.